All right.
Hello.
The fans have been asking for this one.
They've been begging. They have been eagerly awaiting this.
Yeah. So today, we're going to talk about Pirates of the Caribbean, Curse of the Black Pearl, based on the 1967 Disneyland ride of the same name. It was actually the last construction to be overseen by Walt Disney himself, released in 2003 by Walt Disney Pictures. Starring Johnny Depp, Jeffrey Rush, Orlando Bloom, Keira Knightley, and directed by Gore Verbinski. This film was the fourth largest grossing film of 2003.
It was a banger. And I feel like I should add, I know that anyone's listening to this or is already well aware of who we are, but for any new fans out there, God, what a great time for a voice crack too. Yes, this is our first episode of the No One Can Hear You pod, which is, I should say, a reference to Alien, which is what got John and I in the first place excited about this. So to give a little backstory about myself, a huge longtime movie fan. Excited to be part of the very first podcast that's about movies. There aren't any others out there that I'm aware of personally. But I grew up on movies, grew up really on blockbusters more than anything. Some of my favorite early memories were going to see those prequel Star Wars movies that everyone hated at the time and now become beloved to at least people of our generation. Lord of the Rings, and then certainly these pirate movies as well. So I, like John, have also always been a huge fan of podcasts. We joke, but I figured it would be exciting to be, instead of just purely a consumer of not just art, but the discussion of it and the dissection of what it means for culture, to actually be a part of it would be a meaningful way to spend time. And actually, I think we both feel like we want to become better, I guess, not consumers, but understanders or appreciators of the art that we love so much and the artists that we love that make it. So anyway, very excited to be a part of it. And John, I'll let you kick it off with your
intro. Yeah, and to that, I mean, to above all that, it's just opportunity for us to get on the mic, once a week, once every couple of weeks, talk movies.
Let's chop it up. Yeah,
chop it up.
That's a big part of it too. I know that, John, I don't even know this. Are you a fully remote boy?
I'll go in from time to time.
On client side, or will you actually go into the office?
A little bit of both.
What a boomer. No, I'm fully isolated. I'm fully within my cube. I don't see anyone. It's me and my girlfriend. And then it's John once a week when we talk about movies.
Right. Well, that's about to be me in the winter. But yeah, some of the highlights these past 6 months have been texting movies. So now we're talking movies. Now we're recording us talking movies.
Getting into it.
Yeah, getting into it. But to give my background, so yeah, I've been into movies my whole life, right? But in 2020, I started focusing on okay, I got the AFI 100 list. I'm gonna see all these movies, and really, really going deep, keeping track of my scores, Excel spreadsheets as you do. But then introduced the Letterboxd 2023. And I think that really got me obsessed with okay, let me go through a whole director's filmography. Let me make a list of the top 10 horror movies or whatever, and really put some structure around it. And obviously I like the social side of it as well. But yeah, so just to get into this movie now that we're talking about. So
well, actually, and sorry, I have to do one more thing. And I know I'm immediately breaking the rules. This is a podcast, but I do just want everyone at home that's not watching to know part of my skill set here is that I do own a Nicole Kidman at the AMC Theater t-shirt. And that's the sort of credentials that you're only going to find in Los Angeles. So everyone needs to be aware of that.
Is that her big career moment now? Is that the t-shirt?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Oh, that's all the kids are talking about for sure. People are wearing it for Halloween, which is a couple weeks ago. It's big. Okay.
All right. I'll take your word for it. So prepare to be blown out of the water.
Nice.
Okay.
Nice.
So after Port Royal is attacked and pillaged by a mysterious pirate crew, capturing the governor's daughter, Elizabeth Swann, in the process, William Turner asks free-willing pirate Jack Sparrow to help him locate the cruise ship, the Black Pearl, so he can rescue the woman he loves.
Mm-hmm.
So this movie's got a 3.9 on Letterboxd. That's pretty good. That's pretty solid. That's a tough crowd.
Sorry, not to cut you off, John. I'm just going to say another thing I want to just call out about this pod.
Yeah.
I think part of what John and I envisioned this, there's a lot of pushback from the boomer cinephile community about Letterboxd.
Yeah.
And it's no shame against them. A lot of my favorite podcasters are in that camp. and I still love them. But that said, it's like I think Letterboxd was a huge thing that got both you and I and a lot of people our age back into movies or into them in the first place. And so I think it's like it's a growing world of where movies are talked about, and not just that, but like how they're marketed and how they get distributed after they've already come out. So anyways, this is a podcast that we like Letterboxd, and we're not going to shit on you for it. But
Yeah.
unless you have bad taste, then we will. And so that's just the reality.
Yeah, but also like there's just a social part of it. Like I got friends who I just keep up with through Letterboxd now.
100%.
Like,
I mean, that was you and I.
Yeah, I know.
With you and I for a bit.
But that's great. Like I think that's amazing. So yeah, we're definitely not haters at all. We're gonna lean into it, So 3.9, 2.09 million members have logged it. And it's number 222 on the IMDb. What is it?
IMDb.
Yeah, it's irrelevant now. It's IMDb. I think they had some kind of app going, but it didn't get off the ground. But it's in the top 250. So I was trying to say.
Really eloquently too. Really,
I know. Yeah, I know. We're working on it.
We practiced it. Now it looks like we didn't practice it.
No, yeah. It's on the fly. Okay, let's talk about the movie. Let's talk about the pre-production first.
Get into it.
Yeah, so it was developed in 2001. The script was first developed in 2001, and then it was rewritten. I think it was kind of like Disney IP for a while, obviously because of the ride, so the 1967 ride. So there have been some kind of passes at turning it into a movie, but this is really when it picked up, 2001. And then Jerry Bruckheimer got involved in 2002. So Jerry Bruckheimer, I'll just read you a couple of his films from his resume. So you got Beverly Hills Cop, Top Gun, Bad Boys, National Treasure. So once he got involved,
he's a nice upper middle class guy. Pretty humble life.
yeah, he did well for himself. But yeah, so that he really picked it up once things picked up once he got involved. And then you had a couple other guys who were brought in to work on the script. But really, where we get to the movie starts moving when Gore Verbinski signs on. So he signs on in October 2002. And then from 2002 to March 2003, they're doing the filming in St. Vincent and Grenades, whatever, and as well as some sets in LA. So that's where it took place. A little bit on Gore. So he went to UCLA, got a BA in cinematography. I think the interesting thing about him, I don't know if you read this when you were looking at him, is he started his career in music. So he played in several
bands.
Some LA rock bands, and he's got kind of like it's like a cliche story of like he sold his guitar for a super 8mm camera.
I mean, I'll just say right now, I don't believe that for a fucking second. It's too good of a story. It's too good of a story. Perfect. When you hear something like that, I'm like, his dad floated in 10K. I mean, there's just no way there's not like a little middle ground in there or something.
Well, I'm sticking to it. I think that's amazing. Whether the money went directly for the camera, I don't know. But yeah, what was really interesting about him, I didn't actually know much about him. But when I was looking into it, so he directed before this 3 movies that all did really well. So the first one's funny. I don't know if you ever heard of Mouse Hunt.
I looked it up for this. I had never heard of it before.
So that was just one that for some reason my parents had the VHS of. It's just like I didn't remember seeing it, and then like when I saw that he directed, I immediately went and logged it. I'm like, I saw that because it came out in 1997. It's just one of those VHSs we had around the house. I don't remember it being like that great, but $38 million budget and then $125 million at the box office.
Like that. I was gonna say, is that one of those like, because I feel like everyone grew up with some movie that they were like, well, everyone watched this, and they just simply did not. But it's like this movie made like over $100 million, so it clearly wasn't. It wasn't Dudley Do Right, which was my version of that.
I've never heard of that.
Oh, that was oh god, who just won for? It didn't just win, but 2 Oscars ago got Best Actor for The Whale. That was Brendan Fraser. Yeah, he plays a Canadian Mountie in it. I mean, it was just some real slop.
Okay.
But anyway, back to your point. Yeah, no, I mean, surprisingly big movie for like an opening act for this guy.
Oh yeah, and it's in that category you're talking about of like we had like the Flubber VHS with Robin Williams too. Yeah. It's just like one of those. It's like ingrained in my brain of like, oh, we had that movie, but barely remember it. So he does that in 1997. Then he does The Mexican in 2001, and that's like a $40 to $57 million budget, and then $147 million at the box office. So just another smash.
Actually, I don't think I've even heard of this one. I looked up the other one, but
yeah, no, I have not seen that. And then The Ring. So I didn't know that he did this
That was a
remake
twist.
of The Ring. Yeah. So 1998 film Ring. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't want to guess what country it's from, but I think it's like Japanese film or
I'm sure you got it. I'm sure you could.
I
I'm
hope
sure
so.
you've got some nuance you can throw on.
And I'm going out on a. I'm walking the plank early on this this podcast trying to
Really,
guess.
just hanging yourself.
I know this is bad. No, but so he does this remake of The Ring, $48
You
million
don't want to
budget.
guess.
I'm moving on into the budget. We're talking about the budget now. So it's a $48 million budget, $150 million at the box office. So another smash. So good. So a couple good start for Gore. But then he only did 10 movies since 97, which I was surprised about. And the last one was A Cure for Wellness. I don't know if you ever saw that one. I think I've seen parts of it on TV, but that was 2016.
Yeah, I looked through that list and it seemed, especially for how obviously massive these movies were. But The Ring was also a huge horror movie growing up. Like that was really, really big.
Yeah.
And then I feel like there just hasn't been anything that big from him since. I don't have his filmography right in front of me, but I didn't see anything. Has there really been anything post Pirates that's been that successful, at least financially speaking?
I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think so. And by the way, I just looked it up. Ring, the original 1998, is Japanese. So,
well, you didn't say
it. No, I did. That's what I went with. I went with Japanese.
I remember. What I heard was I don't want to guess.
Okay.
But I was going to say no. To the point about him not creating any, or well, who am I to say success otherwise? But in terms of financially, like hasn't had a major blockbuster since these movies. It's really fascinating. Like there are those directors that have done it for forever. Like the obvious ones are like the Spielbergs, right? Like has just gone out and made commercial hit after commercial hit. But I think there is so much to like actually making these films. I don't know who said it originally, but the idea that anytime there is a successful movie, it really is just lightning in a bottle. Like I think, not to get too ahead of it, but I could see a lot of parallels between these first three Pirates movies and even like a Lord of the Rings movies, in the sense of like, they were just so successful at being what they wanted to be. Like they had a lot of heart to them, but like they were well aware of the fact that people are here for fun. And then afterwards, like just a really steep fall off in terms of both the franchise and the director in some ways. That just kind of makes me think that it's like maybe this was a right time, right place. Like these were the guys to make these films, but it is just so challenging to make anything successful at this scale.
Oh yeah. So yeah, from what I read, it seemed like he doesn't have like too much of an interest in being like this big movie director. Like he spent the past, he's working on a new movie actually. It comes out in 2025. It's called Good Luck, Have Fun, Don't Die. But he seems like he's kind of a private guy. He like wants to spend time with his family, and like he doesn't. I don't know where he lives, but he's not in the scene from what I was reading.
That's another point too. I'm sure it's so much work making his own. A lot of times they do like to back off too. Who wouldn't?
Yeah. The only other movie I think other than the pirate, like he did the first three Pirates, is that was also a hit. I think is Rango. Rango I think was pretty well known. Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about the actors. So yeah, interesting thing that I came across I didn't know. So the script was originally written for Hugh Jackman to play Jack Sparrow.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I know it is crazy. But the reason they didn't go with him, he just wasn't a big enough actor at the time. He was pretty famous in Australia. So they ended up going with Johnny Depp, who, was much more well known. And I think just the key thing about Depp in this role is he took such an unexpected approach to the character, which really makes the character and makes it such an iconic character. So like even when they were going through and looking at like some of the test screenings, like when they're showing the producers, they were really confused by what he was doing, like what the kind of moves he was making. And it's really because he based that character off of rock stars, right? Like Keith Richards. But that's just not what Disney had him, like the Disney executives had in mind.
It's like the exact scenario of the like, if it bombed, they would have been like, well, of course. And if it's successful, they're like, well, of course. It was such a different approach too. But yeah, I think the Keith Richards point is an interesting one too, because obviously in the later movies, he comes in as Jack's father in the third movie. So it's cool. Right. They go full circle with that. And actually they look uncannily similar in it too. They're incredible with what they can do with makeup and wardrobe. Yeah. But it is such an interesting choice to like go for this rock star persona with the pirate style, but in retrospect, it makes total sense.
Yeah, I mean, and it creates this iconic character, and I guess like
Mhm.
that's sometimes what it takes to like make a character that just lasts in cinema is like taking a different approach. And I'm going to make a weird comparison here that it's not I'm not saying it's as good as this role, but it's like what Brando did in The Godfather. He's got the jaw piece in, and he's talking in a weird voice, and
Mhm.
it just like it becomes so easy to like do impressions of, or it just becomes I mean the word that's jumping to mind just becomes such an iconic movie character, and like taking a more like unique approach like creates that, I think.
Oh, I completely agree. And I don't think it's inappropriate to compare it to a Brando at all. I mean, like, I think this is like a truly a generation defining part. And I think the 90% of the difference between the two at this point is just that not enough time has passed. I think 30 years from now, like, who knows which one will be remembered more, which one won't. But it's like, I think a lot of that just stuff has to do with the recency of it, and like the way that we look at, like, well, this is classic cinema versus this is the blockbuster of the time. It's like Jaws was a blockbuster too, right? Like at one point, it's just that with greater time, you have like a little bit more of like a respect starts to grow in a different way.
It's true.
um yeah, not to be too preachy, but I mean, obviously, like, the Academy just doesn't really celebrate these sorts of movies and these sorts of roles either, in the way that they do with like time period pieces, and with dramas. So it'll never get its laurels in the same way, but I think it's a totally fair comparison.
Yeah, but it's an interesting point about with time, if it might, because our generation, obviously, this is like a big movie for us,
Hmm.
So in 100 years, is this showing up on AFI lists? I don't know. I mean, for the record, I think that Godfather is a better movie, but I just want to make
Yeah.
that clear because I think half people might have just turned off. Our three listeners, we might just lost two of them, but
I'm saying equally iconic. That was my point. I
okay,
probably
fair.
didn't say it very well, but
No,
my point. Yeah, what is this image, and what does it mean in Hollywood to
yeah.
a movie lover?
No, same page. Yeah, we're on the same page. So I just picked out a couple of movies from Johnny Depp that led up to this. There's definitely more. I mean, different ones will mean different, like will mean more to other people. But he did What's Eating Gilbert Grape '93, Ed Wood '94, Donnie Brasco '97, Fear and Loathing Las Vegas '98, Sleepy Hollow '99, and then Blow in 2001. So I mean that's a pretty good lead up into this. He was kind
Hmm.
of at the top of his game here. And then some of the other actors. So Orlando Bloom had just come off the first two Lord of the Rings movies. So the third
Yep.
one was filmed the same year, where obviously he plays Legolas. And then Keira Knightley, she was in Bend It Like Beckham in 2002.
Well, I mean, really quickly, also just
Yeah.
to touch on Orlando Bloom. What a crazy opening act to your career, too. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
like, I should have put together a list or something. But I mean, can you think of a more dominant, like, double franchise opener for like a young leading man? I mean, I can't think of any. Certainly not in recent years. It's also been there haven't been as many movies led by young men in the past 5-10 years anyway.
Yeah.
But two different franchises of that scale. There is someone else in this movie that actually has had way more franchise success than him, but I'll touch on that later.
Yeah, I mean, I want to talk more about him later too, because he hasn't done much since this, right?
Yeah,
And I think there's
true.
argument that these first two franchises was kind of the best he could do, maybe. But I think we'll talk
Hmm.
more about that later. One note on Keira Knightley. For some reason, I just always confuse her with Natalie Portman. I don't know if anyone else feels the same. I think it's because I don't know. Maybe they look kind of similar, or I know she plays Natalie Portman's body double in Phantom Menace. You mentioned those
Is that
originals.
true?
Yeah, yeah. So like the one who gets like blown up on the
I had no idea about this.
yeah, on the
Wow.
like landing pad. So
No, I remember the scene. I just had no idea that it was Keira Knightley.
yeah, for some reason whenever I'm trying to think of their name, I mix them up. I don't know. It's just someone I mix up.
Hmm.
Um but yeah, so okay. So that was kind of the background. But yeah, you want to talk a little bit about what it meant to you when this movie came
Oh
out?
yeah. I mean, this is a movie I'll never forget first seeing it, because, not to date myself too much, but I was like nine. I wasn't even 9 when this came out. I was pretty young, but I do remember I didn't see it in theaters. I was at like an uncle's house or something as a kid, and my older cousins wanted to watch it. All I knew about it from the trailers was that there were skeletons, and I like fully sobbed beforehand. I was like, I don't want to watch this. I was crying. It was such a mess. And then after I kind of like got it all out, I was like, okay, maybe I'll just start it. And by the end of the movie, I absolutely loved it. I immediately loved the movie. But at the time, I was horrified of like seeing a PG-13 movie as a kid. I was a big scaredy cat with it. But by the time the second and the third ones came in, I mean, they were huge. Like the rich kid in my class, this is like really the highest point I think any blockbuster can achieve, is the rich kid rented out a theater for everyone in the grade to go see it.
Yeah.
So it's like if you can hit that sort of peak, your movie's probably making over 100 million, I assume. And yeah, it was really big. I mean, all three of them were pretty massive. I think, not to get too into it, but the second one is probably my favorite of the three, and I think the third falls off a little bit, but I still feel like they were all three like really exciting blockbuster movies in a way that I almost feel like we've lost the art of them. Like there's something so exciting about the fact that these were standalone essentially. Like at least the first one was franchise-less, and now it's much bigger than that, obviously. But at the time, it had so much space to move around with, and it didn't have the shackles of a lot of Disney content today, with obviously the MCUs of the world, or even the Godzilla and Kong, and how everything's supposed to tie into stuff. So I really enjoyed. I think it's like a perfect version of scale, sort of, where within the movie it feels like anything is possible, but there isn't so much content going on at any one time that it starts to feel a little thin. Maybe the third movie starts to get that way, and certainly after the first three. But I mean, I've only grown to love these movies more and more, even as I've gotten older, and some of the plot points can get a little shaky or something. Like I've gotten much more of an appreciation for just how willing this movie is to be fun and unapologetic about that. And actually, in a way, it takes that fun very seriously. Like, I think that's part of why this movie works, because at no point is it considering itself a joke unless it's trying to be funny, I guess.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I just really love these movies. Have only grown to love them more.
Wait, which is maybe which one does Calypso come in? Where she's like a crab? It's like a bunch of crabs on the beach. Is the third one?
I think she's technically. I think she shows up in the second one briefly, but she's only very briefly in it. Third movie, then she has like more of a major part.
Yeah, because as you were talking about, I was thinking about that. That was probably, I don't remember being like disappointed at a theater as a kid. I don't think I was like critiquing movies in that way, but I do remember seeing that one and going like, I don't know. But obviously, like I love the first two, but I don't think I saw the first two in theaters. I think it was both like DVDs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, my story for this one, it was actually the first PG-13 movie I ever saw, ever. So
really?
So my parents are really strict about movies. So they were always vetting like what I could see. And I'd have to call home, like if I was at a sleepover party or something, and see like, hey, can I watch this? And sometimes the answer would be no. And that was always awkward to go back downstairs and be like, yeah.
Oh, it's a terrible vibe. This is like an absolute vibe killer.
I was surprised I was getting invited, but anyway, so they were very strict about movies, and I think we went to the ride. I think I experienced the ride first, and my mom was like, okay, well, this is a good PG-13 movie to start with. Like, that's how we were treating it, of like, okay, now this is one that you can start. Like, they were very like, they wanted to kind of schedule it out, So I was like, great. Like, I got my first PG-13 movie. And went home. I had like a sleepover party coming up. My friends wanted to fire it up, and I didn't call home and ask, because I was like, I already got the okay on this one. I already have this approved, so we're good. And then the next morning, my mom picked me up, and she wasn't happy that I watched it without calling. So I had the okay, and then I watched.
Really? Why?
Yeah. Man, I don't want to drag her on this first podcast. She might listen to it.
I mean, you brought up the story. I have to hear now.
No, she's great, but she's like, they were just very they were very protective of the content I consumed, of like both music and movies, and that she just wanted to watch it with me. It was the first time I was ever watching a PG-13 movie, and she said I was okay to watch it, but it was supposed to be like we watched it as a family.
And you were 19 years old when this happened.
Yeah,
you were 25.
Yeah, I was 25, and no, yeah. So that was how I saw that. So yeah, it became this kind of like big movie for me because of that. It was the first PG-13 movie, and I just remember everyone liking it, like everyone doing the impressions of Jack Sparrow, walking like him. Like I remember like going to the pool and like kids that can't do anything off the diving board, so they do like an impression of Jack Sparrow. Yeah, the walk. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I do think this is a good example of like the DJ Khaled suffering from success sort of movie and I think it's particularly big in comedies, like how big Austin Powers was ended up being to its detriment, sort of like it kind of just killed it because the joke just got pounded into
Yeah.
the ground. And in the same way, everyone was doing the Jack Sparrow impression and trying to do what, their best Johnny Depp. So I think in some ways it suffered from it a little bit because there was just so much going on about it now. I mean, I don't even know what that would look like today because now there's just more content than ever. So it's not like it would be your neighbor, your annoying neighbor kid is doing the impression, but you'd just be surrounded by TikToks about it, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know, or like Jack Sparrow, like yeah, or like doing the gritty or something. I don't know.
Yeah, do you think can we even grind something into the ground anymore, or does it that just become the bit?
Yeah, I
Like
don't
it used to
know.
be back in the day, it's like, you did it enough, everyone's like, just shut the fuck up about it, right? But like now it's I don't know, like that's half the joke is that it just then becomes like a permutation and it becomes like a new in joke that you're being annoying.
Yeah, I agree. But also the funny thing is, I remember people like doing like, oh, like where's like we're out of rum or whatever. And then when I watched it again, I was like, oh, he's like barely drinks at all. Like some of those like impressions, like
Hmm.
they weren't even really like that big of a part of the movie. But yeah, it was definitely like a big piece of like of like kid culture for a while, of like doing
Oh,
Jack
agree.
Sparrow voice and stuff.
All right.
Um,
I think we should get into some of the best scenes.
yeah, I think so too.
Best scenes and things that we liked the most. So do you want me to kick it off or do you want it?
Yeah, you go ahead and kick it off.
Okay. I'm going to start, and this is partially chronologically, part of it's just like free flow of thought. Um, I love the opening sequence even. I think it really set the tone early of when we see Will wash up from the shipwreck of like I think going into this movie a lot of people would have expected like, oh, it's a Disney movie about pirates, it's Johnny Depp, he's funny, I'm going to go see this. And like the opening sequence is really dark. Like it like visually is quite dark. The first shot you get of the Black Pearl disappearing into the fog is like legitimately pretty like really well done, but also a little spooky. Like I think it was a lot of it did a really good job of setting the tone for this is going to be a movie that like takes itself more seriously than a lot of people would have expected.
Yeah, I agree. When I saw it again, I was like, oh, like I started nitpicking it right away, and I was like, no, because I was like, oh, why is she even on the ship? And then they explain it later, like they're coming, like they're it's like a passage ship, whatever. But
Mm-hmm.
like yeah, that scene is really great, and like once I was able to like turn off like just like, some of the stuff with like her talking to Will and like that first scene where she takes the necklace and like you're kind of like, okay, like I'm in for this ride. Let's see what's about to happen. My first like favorite scene though is Jack's intro. I think like
Oh yeah.
that's just great. Like you think he's on like a giant ship, and then
Yeah,
he
yeah.
and then like they pan out and he's on like a little and he's getting the water out of the boat,
Oh, it's
and it's just
incredible.
oh my god! And then he like just takes the step onto the dock, So like that's what I really like. And then that kind of leading into like the first escape, And I think it's important also because it's right away you're like, okay, this guy's like got some questionable morals, Like he's gonna jump in and save the girl, right? He's gonna dive in and risk his life and save her, but he's also gonna like put the chain around her neck and like threaten her so he can escape. Like he's in it for himself, I think that kind of
Yeah.
sets the tone for the movie.
So I think if the I would say that that's a separate scene from like the opening one of them
Yeah, yeah.
finding Will, right? I think that not to get too out of it is like probably the best scene. I don't it's one of the best scenes in the movie certainly. And I think one of the best things about it is that there's so much like exciting glamour and action and hijinks going on the surface of the movie, but really underneath it is like this monster truck engine of a narrative that is like pushing forward, and it's a script that like it's so thought out that it never feels intentionally this way, but it has so much foreshadowing to stuff, and it does such a good job of conveying who these characters are and where they are in a really succinct manner. Like that first scene of him getting off of his sinking ship is like a perfect depiction of who he is as a man, of like he's so unbothered by this, or as a character. He immediately is stealing. He
Yeah.
like saves the girl only to threaten to kill her. Like all of these things are so fun in the moment, but what makes it such a successful movie is that all of these things drive the story forward in some way.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, is there anything else you like from the beginning? Because the next thing I really like is the Port Royal raid. Was there anything before that you really liked?
Um, Oh, I would say the first fight scene between he and Will is fantastic. The sword play is really good. And I think that's another thing, like, they go only bigger with this in the later movies, but like the ropes pulling people, doing all this crazy stuff. I think that was just an incredibly choreographed scene that it's like kind of easy to write it off as like, oh yeah, this is like a goofy pirate scene, but genuinely it's really well done and just so creative in how they shot it. So
Oh,
I love that scene.
I agree. And I remember really liking that as a kid. And you're right. It is easy to write it off now as like too like slapsticky, right? You know, where he's getting like, there's like like our cow or whatever it is, like moving the
The
chain.
donkey,
Yeah,
yeah.
the donkey. And like, just like the, like the way they're fighting and he's like walking him through like, oh, let me see how your footwork is and stuff. Like it's easy to
Mm-hmm.
write that off, but it's an adventure ride. Like this is like a
Totally.
fun adventure movie, and like there's some fun fight scenes like that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I did like that. But yeah, I gotta talk about that Port Royal raid because that is, I think, awesome. Like when the Black Pearl first attacks Port Royal, and like this is where I was really like, oh, okay, like I like this is like a Disney movie, wow, because that doorman opens the front door and
Gets
just
his
gets
head blown off.
yeah,
Yeah.
just shot point blank. I was like, oh, all right, like
Right
they're like
before that, there's a shot of a child screaming in the street
yeah.
that literally looks like it's out of Saving Private Ryan, like storming the beach. Like the camera's shaking. There's just this lost child. You're
Yeah,
like, this is really dark for a kids movie.
I know. But then, yeah, that whole scene, and then like Elizabeth's going for like the sword off the mantle, and like the music
Hmm.
stops because it like the sword's like it's just a display. She can't pull it out. Like there's still like some funny stuff in it, but yeah, it's pretty intense. They're chasing her
Yeah.
down. Like yeah, I really like that scene. Um, okay, what else you got from the beginning? Because the next thing I want to talk about is the music.
I do want to mention two characters really quick.
Yeah,
Barbosa, I think, just great characters design that totally matches like the energy he brings too. Like I love he's got the big hat, he's got the big coat, and like with it he has like this almost, I don't want to say Captain Hook because it's a little derivative to say that, but like he has just like a very like almost like renegade nobleman kind of energy. Like he's clearly eloquent to a point. I just love that character. Also wanted to say, is the Commodore low key kind of a chiller? Because Norrington, in a lot of ways in this movie, really should be the asshole, like the quintessential like loses the girl, rule follower cuck. And actually, like pretty consistently, he does like the patient or like slightly more empathetic thing than you would expect. Like Will yells at him that they should go after Elizabeth. It's like Will's essentially a nobody in this town, and this is like essentially a caste system they live in. He could lock him up right there. He doesn't do it. He lets Will go, even though at the end he like steals the boat, getting ahead of it. But like Will gets Elizabeth, and
yeah.
the only thing he says to him is like, you know what, you're a really good blacksmith, and I assume you'll be a great husband, and then walks away. It's like, who of us could say that we would be so open minded about that?
Well, but is he too chill? Is that why he loses the girl? Because like Orlando, like or Will Turner's got the blind heroicism, right? He's rushing in. We got to go after him. What are our options? Like, let's pull out
Mm-hmm.
Jack. And he's kind of like, oh yeah, I proposed to her last night. Like she hasn't responded yet. I'm like, I don't know, man. Like it's maybe,
Yeah, you know what? I think I hear what you're saying, but there's benefits to that
yeah,
chillness because like then there's moments where Jack tries to trick him to go and find the pirates, right? And he's like, "Oh, this would be another feather in your cap. Maybe you'll be admiral next." And he's like, "I don't do this for me. I do this for my people that I serve." And you're like, "Wow,
yeah,
that's actually pretty cool of you, Norrington. I don't know if I can say that about most of the people that are supposed to protect and serve me in my life. So
yeah,
this is pretty cool."
yeah. Well, I think he's
But
great. I think he's great, but I think like his chill attitude definitely contributes to the problem at the end where
yeah,
he doesn't get the girl. But I got more scenes to talk about, but I think we
yeah.
got to mention the music before we get into
Oh,
any others.
absolutely.
Oh
Yeah.
man, it's so good, and I did a little research on it. So I mean, the one thing though, first to mention is like I think the first time I really like, obviously the main theme and the main score is awesome. It's so iconic, but like even when like you're first on the Black Pearl ship and you get the first scene with Barbosa and all that, they got this little like pipe music in the background. It's kind of like this like wood pipe music. Like there's so many like cool little touches where the different characters get introduced. But so I was looking into the music, and this guy Klaus Bendel, he gets credit as a composer. But what happened is they wanted Hans Zimmer, right? So they called Hans Zimmer. He was working on Last Samurai, but then he came on as a producer. So you have Zimmer involved, and then you have like it was like 7 other guys who worked on it, including some big names. So Ramin Djawadi, he's the guy who did the Game of Thrones. Yeah, he's great. So he worked on it.
Wow.
Jeff Zanelli and Steve Jablonsky, who did Transformers. So you got some like heavy hitters all contributing to the music.
I thought Linkin Park did Transformers.
Linkin Park did do Transformers.
that's my truth. So this guy can get lost.
Wow, he's a big name. You gotta put some respect on his name. But yeah, I think the music's awesome. And then I mean, you talked about this already earlier, but I did want to like put a point on it. Is like just Barbossa is so good. Like he is so perfect, and that first scene with him is so good. And I think the skeleton reveal is so good. And maybe we could talk about this for a second. Talk about the CGI for a second, because you get a little of it earlier when Jack's in the prison cell. You see like the skeleton arm, you know. But then that first like full reveal of all the different like CGI skeletons, I think is really good. And like when I'm evaluating the CGI, I think about like in that time frame, like is this really good, you know? And like you look at like The Mummy Returns in 2001, which is like so like now famously like memed, where it's like The Rock. Yeah, it's like so bad. Like this looks pretty good. It's not perfect, and obviously it gets better in like Dead Man's Chest, but this looks pretty good.
Yeah, I'd also put the caveat of like it looks good, but it's not one of those like, oh well, like it was of its time, it looks good. Like it definitely, you know, it doesn't hold up to what we can make today, obviously. But like I don't think that it's that level of aged out where I'm like it throws me and I'm just forgiving it. Like I still enjoy it, and I think it's really done effectively, especially the way that they combine it with the practical effects, which they had to do for certain shots where someone would be partially walking in and out of the moonlight. They had to dress people up, do certain prosthetics on their body. So they did a really incredible job with it that I think still holds up. And also, I mean, only gets better with the series going on, especially in the second and third one. The graphics that they end up doing for Davy Jones and his crew are unbelievable. I mean, pretty famously. So they post that all over Twitter, clowning on the CGI of today, honestly, with good reason.
Yeah. I got a couple other good things, but what else you got?
I do want to so there's a couple shots. I'm just going to run through them because I know we're going a little long. I think the shot of Will and Jack underwater with the boat to steal the interceptor is like iconic, super cool. As a kid, I thought, I was like, oh my God, can I do that? And everyone else thought that as well.
And turns out you can't.
I definitely don't.
Turns out that is not possible.
Yeah. The ending, or not the ending, but towards the end, I'm jumping over a ton of stuff here, but the scene of Barbossa telling his crew to take a walk, and underwater they all just flat out walk out. It's kind of a parallel of that earlier scene. I just think that's legitimately still so cool, so like imaginative, and kind of horrifying. I remember that one as a first time I viewed it was like, that kind of got me the chills again. So I just think that's like such a visionary, cool thing to build out.
Oh, I agree. I had that one down too. And that whole scene, because it's cutting back to like, you know, Jack double crossing again, and then he takes the gold, and now he's a skeleton, and it's a great fight scene. You know, like epic. They're throwing the swords around, and it's, you know, but then and then they're walking underwater, and you have those two guys who are like dressed in like they're in like dresses. You know, there's like so much. There's so many cool things going on in that whole scene. But I did have that down too, of like just the walk underwater. Another thing I was going to mention, and you mentioned it earlier, but the jokes are really great. And it's because of like that self-awareness that you mentioned. And like I think a good example is like when they talk about the pirate code, you know, like when I was watching it again, I was like, oh, parlay, like what is this? This is dumb. And then it's like, then they make a joke about it in the next scene, you know, where he's like, oh, it's just a guideline. I remember like that's something like my dad would quote, you know, it's more just a guideline, you know? So like they have these kind of ridiculous things, but then they'll like be very self-aware that it's ridiculous and like make a joke about it, which I think is great. I mean, I think another one is the fact that like they find like they're like, well, like we find out that only like Will Turner's blood will like you know, fix the curse, but too bad we just like sank him to the bottom of the ocean. It's like, yeah, it's like kind of tough to find that out right after.
I forgot about that piece of it too, that the
Yeah.
blood was part of it. I did not remember that initially.
Yeah. Yeah, then it's just another great thing. It's just like Jack's constant double crossing. Just he's always trying to make the best move. I just think that's awesome. He's always like trying to get ahead. He's always gonna like.
he's just such a bastard the whole time. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's awesome. And then like the pirates leave him at the end, and it's like, oh, it's in the code. Like it's like, and that's just like kind of like it's just, hey, it's okay. Like it's part of the code. Like, you don't have to go back for him. Like I just love that. And then the last like scene that I really love that I want to talk about is the hanging scene at the end. I think that scene is awesome. Like Will throws the sword, and I just remember thinking that was so cool as a kid, like him standing on the sword, and
now he's got a cool hat, right?
Yeah,
like he's really dressed for the part.
Yeah, now he's a pirate. Yeah.
We do have to mention just like how cool Tortuga is really quickly. I love that that's part of the ride as well. And what else is there? I mean, also just I have to call out the fact that they actually built the Black Pearl. That's a real ship that they built.
I didn't know that.
I think it's unbelievable. Like, imagine trying to shoot something like that compared to like any given sitcom that you're filming like at a studio, right? Like a lot of that was done on the lots. I think they did some of them in like the Burbank Disney lot and things like that, but a lot of that they filmed out in the ocean, and like those have got to be such difficult conditions to have like proper camera work and lighting and like getting people dressed up and makeup. Like really so cool to do something like that on like this actual vessel that they built out. And also, as an aside, just crazy that people 400 or 500 years ago were building boats like that. I mean, like, think of the craftsmanship that would be required to make a ship that could actually cross the ocean with several hundred people, several 100,000 tons of cargo on board. I mean, this is just becoming a naval podcast at this point, but I do think it's really incredible, and I think it's part of the charm of these movies, in the same way that like sci-fi is exciting because you're seeing space and all this high-tech stuff. I think what's really cool about these movies is it really is like opening your eyes to what the world once was, in a sense.
Oh, that's a great point. Yeah, no, I totally agree. Anything else that's good before we get into some of the bad?
Oh yeah, I just want to. This isn't necessarily something good about this movie. I just wanted to say I forgot that Zoe Saldana was in this.
Yeah,
and I also didn't realize she's the highest-grossing actress of all time. In terms of like, she not for everything she starred in, but if you include every franchise she's been in, she's made more than $15 billion worldwide. Like, movies that she's been in have made that much money, which is astounding.
She's the one girl on the crew, right? That joins?
Yeah, she's the one who's like, you owe me a ship.
Yeah, okay.
And her franchises include Pirates, Avatar, all of Guardians of the Galaxy / Marvel. And what am I forgetting? Oh god, there's another one. Anyway, I mean, still an insane career right there. Like, Avatar was the highest grossing movie of all time. The second one made over $1 billion as well.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Okay. So I'm gonna talk about the bad, but like, I don't know. I think it's important to talk about the good and the bad. It doesn't mean I don't love this movie. I'm gonna talk about the ranking at the end. I know you are too. Like the scoring of it. But I think I gotta call out some of these things, and you may not agree with them. I think the biggest glaring one to me, and I'll make a case for it.
I already know what it's gonna be.
I mean, Orlando Bloom is not good.
Yeah.
He's so bad. But this is the thing, man. It's like I think he's so bad because some of the other supporting characters are so good. Like, you have like little like side red coat characters and like Black Pearl crew,
Gibbs,
who are so great, and then he's just so flat, man. He just is not that good. And it's like he came off of his role as Legolas, right? And like that character is
incredibly flat as well.
Yeah, because he's like, elves are supposed to be like emotionless or something in that universe, right? So like they had to know what they were getting, but like I just don't think it works. I guess you can make the case that like the blind heroicism is like what you need here, like we were talking about earlier. But I just really don't think he's good. I'm gonna give a couple more points, and then I open the door for you to disagree. But like it's so overplayed, like how he hates pirates. Like they throw in like 5 lines of the video. He's like, I hate like there's one when they're fighting where he's like Jack's talking about the swords, like who made all these swords, whatever. And he's like, I practice 3 hours a day. So when I see a pirate, I can kill it, you know? And I'm like, all right, like you hate
You see me say
pirates.
that? I'm like fully Orlando pilled.
Fine,
I
fine.
love everything that he's doing.
I'll give you that, but I just think it's like I get it. Like he's supposed to hate pirates. He doesn't want his dad to be a pirate, and then it sets up him like being a pirate. But like I just think it's a bit much. And then also like the scene with him and Elizabeth, like when they're first together in the ship, it's a little tough. Like he's not coming through for me there. Like and he gets mad at her, I think, because she took the necklace off him, or maybe he's mad because he found out his dad's a pirate. I don't know, but I'm not all in on Orlando Bloom.
Okay, well, here's my hot take for you. I think, and this kind of confirms your point, but if you're shit talking Norrington for having no clutch gene, I mean, we might have to give that to Orlando Bloom for not kissing her when they're on that boat. It's like you're essentially about to go home, and as far as you know, it be either put to death or enslaved for the rest of your life, and you're not going to kiss the governor's daughter. It's like what a miss. I mean, some guys just have no gene for it, and I'm one of them. But I will say, I think you're ultimately right, because there's a reason Orlando Bloom does not necessarily have a huge career after this movie, and that's for a reason. But I think it really works in this movie because I think he has to be there to bounce off of Johnny Depp. I think that Jack Sparrow is just such a bastard at all times, that you need the good guy to be his straight man. I do though like the fact that there's a couple times where like people do see through Jack Sparrow's lies and like treachery and stuff, and actually it ends up biting them in the ass anyway. But I like that the characters are not as dumb as I think a lot of movies would write them to be. So kind of a separate point, but I hear what you're saying.
No, I think it's right, and I do think it is necessary. I just think like with some better acting, and there's a couple scenes like the one with him and Keira Knightley where I'm like, okay, like this is a little tough. Let's see what else I had. Well, I mean, there are just some like overly dramatic moments, but it also is what makes it like great. Like it is a theme park ride. It is like a fun adventure movie, but like, like first, like when they bring Elizabeth to the ship the first time, like why did they leave the necklace on her? So then she can like hold it over the side of the ship and like pretend to drop it, and they all like jump. I'm like, wouldn't you just take it? Like, why does she still have it? Like, but they set up a couple things like that. I mean, the same with like Will walks in to break Jack out. Like, there's no guards. He just walks in. He built the gate. He built the jail cell, and he just breaks it off. I'm like, okay.
Well, it's because they know all the pirates got out anyway, and they're like burying their dead.
Yeah, true. Yeah, they have other things to deal with. I think that's fair. But he is like he's a pretty well-known pirate, You think they have like one guy standing guard, Like just spare one guy.
That's not a bad call. Okay, for mine, actually, sorry, did you have
No, go ahead. I got a couple more, but they're smaller.
Okay, so actually I only have one really. I mentioned earlier as actually one of the kind of surprising twists is that Norrington might be a chiller. This is a little bit of a pivot off that. Is Commodore Norrington actually kind of a groomer? Because as much as he's a chiller, that opening sequence, he's a fully grown man, and he's just hanging out with Elizabeth, who is a child, 10 years old. I mean,
in the beginning,
yeah, the first scene, she is a child.
But is he going for her there? I mean, should we be?
No. But I mean, like, it's like he waited his time. Yeah. I mean, you could tell, like he seemed patient about it, I guess.
Okay.
So that's kind of maybe my hot take, but I do have a second hot take in a moment.
Okay, I'll hold a couple more funny things that I noticed. These aren't like big issues I have. It doesn't make the movie bad, but it is funny. Like the scene is great. First of all, when they steal the interceptor, they swing on, like they trick them into going, and then they swing onto the interceptor. But then they run over that ship that's paddling away. Why were those guys like in the middle of the ocean? Like, wouldn't they have been like paddling back towards shore? So Jack's like, if you think about it, Jack's taking the interceptor out to sea. Mm-hmm. Why were those guys in the way? When he's like, it's just more of the overly dramatic stuff. Like he's got to run over that ship, but how would they have gotten around and been like paddling that way?
I love how it's like a steamroller effect too. I mean, it's like you're put through a wood chipper, which I might be wrong. I mean, but it's not like this is like a Carnival cruise ship. Like, wouldn't they just get knocked to the side? Yeah.
It did make sense. And I got two more. Okay. Well, I mean, one is that ships are catching up way too fast to each other, So it happens first when they catch up to the Black Pearl, when they go to like that little, like the underground or the like in the cave to do the ritual or whatever. Like they just catch up to him way too fast. I don't understand how Jack caught up to him on the interceptor that fast. And it happens again when the redcoats catch up to them at the end. It's just like it just doesn't make sense. Like there's the timelines don't add up for me. And then, I mean, the biggest, like, why would you do that? And why I think that girl you mentioned earlier who's made like billions of dollars or whatever, horrible captain.
She comes back. Yeah. She's just like, you know what? I didn't want to be captain anyway. It's like, seemed like you really wanted to be captain a second ago.
Well, and Keira Knightley makes this call, but they dump all the ammo. You know, they're like, oh, like let's like we want the ship to go faster. Let's just dump all everything overboard. But then they're dumping the ammo, and then they're like, oh wait, no, we have to do a sea battle. So, but it just like sets up like the fork to go in the guy's eye. You know, like they're just setting up these gags. But it's like, I mean, I think maybe you'd keep the ammo. You could dump like some of the other stuff.
I mean, that stuff's pretty heavy. I get where it's coming from. No, but it's probably when you're 10 minutes away from a fight, a good thing to have on hand.
That's all I had. That's all I had.
God, okay. There's so much stuff to really. I mean, we could do another 4 hours about things that are best about this movie. But
I got nothing going on tonight.
Sure,
like we don't need to stick to a time limit.
The listeners don't care either. You know, they don't give a shit about this.
The real fans are still listening right now.
I mean, we haven't even talked about just how incredible the sea fight scenes are.
Oh yeah.
Like they really are so cool. I mean, I was talking about the ships earlier, but like, yeah. Anyway, they're great. Okay, are we ready for the hottest take?
I think we should do hot categories. I think we should do hot takes.
Do you want to go first?
Should I?
Do it.
All right. Why not stay immortal? Like, why are we trying to break this curse? Think about it.
Okay, I thought about it. Well, okay, what do you want
to do? Let me give the case.
Do it.
So okay, they don't need to buy any food, worry about any diseases. Like they get to be immortal and just like do pirate stuff. I get that some pirate activities aren't as enjoyable, right? Like they can't like drink and eat or whatever, but like I think I'd trade having a drink for immortality. You know, like immortality would be much better. And actually when I think about it, I don't even really understand what the curse is, because it's like they have all this food and drinks on the ship, so they can obviously eat and drink when they're humans, right? And like then I guess when he's a skeleton, it runs right through him, so he can't like enjoy his rum. But like I don't know, like I think I'd probably take like not being able to die, and then like when the moon's out, you can't have a drink, and you know.
I think it's more 24/7 than that, though. I think it's just the moonlight essentially removes the glamour that is hiding the fact that they are dead men walking. And so there's no pleasure for them. And like, if you really think about it, the whole point of being a pirate is having a hedonistic existence where you are foregoing any ability to create in the world or provide service or value that might benefit you. And in favor of that, you're just going to kill whoever you want to take whatever you want because you want immediate gratification. It's kind of the core thing. And so if you just stripped someone who their whole identity is that away, and you can't have lust, I mean, you have the lust is the problem. You have the hunger, but you never get to satisfy these urges or even feel the benefit of them. I could see why they want to get rid of it after 10 years of that.
I think that's the right response, but like there's got to be a couple guys on the crew who are like,
there's a couple bookworms. Who are like, I could just curl up,
or like they're in the battle and they're like all of a sudden they're bleeding. Like, oh, like why didn't we just stay alive? You know,
I think they're desperate. I think that's how desperate they are.
Yeah, and then another thing I just thought of also is like, why is Elizabeth not cursed? Like she takes a gold thing too. You know, why is she not a skeleton?
Yeah, I was wondering about the timeline of that. So.
Because Jack takes one, right? Jack picks one up, and then he's a skeleton, right? He's fighting as a skeleton. But then Elizabeth has that, and like she's good.
I choose not to acknowledge the existence of that scene.
All right. Yeah, that's a good point.
All right, I got a hot take.
Let me hear it.
So a moment ago, I was just saying, is the Commodore somewhat of a groomer? My actual hottest take is, are we all sort of groomers? Because Keira Knightley is 17 years old in this movie.
Oh, really?
She's 17. Fully. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, but I was like 10 when I saw it.
Oh, so. No, I agree. Yeah, so was I. But I mean, every magazine, every news show and commercial was like, look at how beautiful this woman is. And she, was, but it's like, it's crazy that she was 17 years old in this movie and got scouted out to be in it and is like, I mean, I will say they don't like anything in the movie. Like they don't ever really put her in a position where she's wearing like too scantily of clothes. Like there's plenty worse movies than this in that regard. But I do think it's still pretty shocking how young she is in this.
Okay, yeah, I didn't know that. Yeah, no, and I thought they weren't leaning into that because it's like a Disney movie, because they definitely like they do. There's a couple shots where it's a little like suggestive, but yeah, but that makes more sense. Okay, she's
It's like
underage.
suggestive in a nightgown, so it's
Right.
like they're definitely, it could be worse.
We
But
shouldn't even
yeah.
be talking about this. No, just kidding.
We didn't make the movie.
No, that's a good one. That's a good hot take.
All right. Director swap. So
Yeah.
we were thinking about if someone else were to make this movie, any director alive or dead, working or otherwise, who do you think could do an interesting version of it? My pick, and this is like the most typical mid-20s white guy film head pick, but I think Denis Villeneuve would be an incredible touch on this. I think at the core of these films, and by these films I mean like pirate, naval, seafaring films, there's so much parallel with sci-fi, or at least a lot of versions of sci-fi, in the sense that like these are really all about exploring not just our world but multiple worlds. And at this period of time, it really felt like when you went to a different country, you were going to an entirely different world. And I think that gets expanded upon a little bit more in the second and third movie. But I think it's still absolutely here. You're going to places where people are speaking languages you don't know. And even if they speak yours, they have a culture that's not yours. And so as much as it's, on planet Earth, it might as well as be Tatooine or something like that. So I think Denis is like the current king of sci-fi, and I think he could do some really incredible stuff with it. I think it would be interesting. It would be a totally different movie. It would lack, I think, a lot of the humor probably. But I think some of the sequences he could build out of what these places look like and what are like the cultures of these towns they visit and islands they go to would be really fascinating to see.
No, I think that's a good one. And I mean, the one I did was Spielberg. I don't know. I just thought it'd be cool to have Spielberg do it.
I mean, that's obvious. He would kill it.
I don't have much of a case for it like you did, but I do want to talk about that. And I was going to talk about it earlier, and this kind of ties into the wrap up, right? Of like the impact, and like you're talking about, like the Dune franchise today. But like, I mean, I think this is probably a common thing that people say, but this really paved the way for franchise movies like like within the MCU. And then like, Scorsese famously compared this to like those kind of movies to theme park rides, and this movie is literally based off of like a theme park ride.
Mm-hmm.
So like this kind of probably spawned the modern franchise. And you have, when you look at like the timeline of other adventure like franchise movies, you have Raiders of the Lost Ark, in the 80s, then you have this in the 2000s, and you have Dune today. So like this is like those are the people who are doing this. And I think it's great. And I don't think I think Hollywood's still doing it. There's just different takes on it, to your point. And you got cool guys in the modern day who have cool takes on like the adventure style movie.
Well, okay, so I question you on that, because I think there's a little bit of a difference. Well, I think there's a pretty big difference even between the way that this and specifically Raiders are not just action movies, but they're adventure movies. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like the adventure movie has kind of gone away in recent years? Because, like, I mean, gosh, this is just off the top of my head, but I'm thinking of like Jumanji is, you could say in setting it's similar, but I wouldn't even call that an adventure movie. I'd call that a action comedy. Like, yeah. I think a lot of the sense of adventure has to feel like you are going to new places, and like the journeying is a part of it as much as the destination. And I just don't know that I feel like there's as many adventure movies out here, or maybe it's just that I don't like them as much as these ones.
Oh, that's actually a good point. And I think like Raiders and this are much different than anything today. And maybe it's because like an audience might want more like world building. Obviously, Dune's based off like books, and there's more to it. I mean, could you think of another like modern day franchise like this? It's just like pure fun adventure ride. I guess not. I guess the Marvel movies were the last like thing we had.
So dominant in the blockbuster space. I mean, it's it's DC, it's Disney, it's the Fast and Furious movies. I think something that could have almost been similar maybe would be like the Mission Impossibles, but that's really only because it's an international thing. I don't feel like there's maybe there's a little bit of a gene of adventure in there, like this was like a precursor to that, but even those are still way more action set pieces than they are adventure. So I think it's certainly diminished in recent years, but I mean a lot of blockbuster categories have.
Well, and that kind of leads like the point you made before that is kind of what I like want to talk about next, which is what genre is it? I think this is easy to say this is an adventure movie, but then it's like action / adventure. And I don't know. I'm just interested in like where things fall in terms of genre because I like to make lists, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is about as pure of like an adventure movie as you can get. Obviously, there are big action set pieces, but like Mission Impossible to me is like an action franchise, whereas for some reason I think of this as like adventure. And maybe there's not really a difference. I don't know, but what do you think?
No, I wholly think there is a difference
Yeah.
between them. I mean, even in the fact that, like, anytime a character gets onto a boat to go somewhere, for the most part, unless you're like Barbosa, they never know where they're going, right? Like, they're like, I'm going to go to a place and try to get, a crew. And then from there, I'm going to try to chase after someone. But there's always this feeling of jumping off a high rock into a pond and not knowing how it's going to shake out. A movie like Mission Impossible is there's question marks, they're solving the mystery, but it's never a question mark of I'm going to Moscow. It's like everyone in the movie, the whole bit of it is that they know everything. Like they have such expertise to things. And so I think part of the adventure story is a little bit of like you have to have, I don't know if it's naivete, but at least a little ignorance to certain stuff that I think is what adventure is. It's like the exploration of the unknown. And so it almost can't be adventurous if someone is so omniscient as Tom Cruise tends to be. Not that he doesn't have his own charm, obviously. I mean, I'm also cruise pilled, but that's another topic. But yeah, I mean, I can't really think of a lot of modern adventure movies. And I do think, it's a little bit of survivor's bias here. I feel like I have so much love for them, but then I'm like, well, it's because I'm listing two of like the most recognizable and commercially successful movies of all time with Raiders and Pirates.
Yeah.
So anyway, I love them and I would love to see more of them, but I do feel like a lot of times recently the Hollywood cocktail for it tends to just be let's do an action comedy in the jungle, which is not at all the same heart, I think, as what an adventure movie should be.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Was there anything else where we talk about scoring? Wrap it up, talk about scoring?
I want to call out really quick Gibbs. We mentioned him a little earlier. Just a great character, great actor, going so hard. I actually had the same question about adventure and action. And then I guess if off the top of your head, I know you had some beef with Will, who would you prefer to have play Will Turner in this, if not Orlando Bloom?
It's so tough. I mean,
we'll say they can be contemporary too. Who do you think could do it today?
I guess you could get a better action star like a Tom Cruise, who's gonna
to play
like
Will Turner.
Yeah, why not? But he's never
a young man.
Yeah, but he's not gonna be that like the no, I know. But like let's say he was the same age. Like he's not gonna be that he doesn't want to be the second banana in the movie, But Will really is like the driving force, And like someone like that who is a better actor who can play like the good guy saving the day, like will do anything, won't stop at anything. Like that blind heroicism that I keep like mentioning. I mean, that's the first one that pops to mind. I'm sure I could think about it and come up with.
What about like an Austin Butler?
Yeah, like someone like that who could play like an action hero movie like that.
You know who couldn't do it is oh my god,
Orlando Bloom.
He could do it, and he did do it, and that movie has several $1 billion to prove it.
That's true.
I was gonna say, oh god, who's the guy that's in Top Gun Maverick, and he was in the Sydney Sweeney movie? Come on,
Miles Teller.
No,
I don't know the Sydney Sweeney movie.
Oh my god!
And I never saw Top Gun Maverick. Honestly, I never saw Top Gun Maverick.
We're talking about Glenn Powell.
Okay, yeah, okay, I could see that.
All right, let's wrap it up here. Closing thoughts. Letterboxd score. What are you giving it, John?
I give it 4.5. It's a solid 4.5, and I think I had a lot of like things I didn't like about or made fun of. Not things I don't like about, but just some of the things I like, oh, okay. And maybe you can make a case that's a 4-star movie, but like I think when I'm coming into ranking and scoring it, you can give it that extra 0.5 for like just how much you love it, how much it means to you, what it did, you know, to like to cinema, like how important it is. And I give it a 4.5, and I compare it to like when I'm scoring something, I like to take it very seriously. You know, I like to take it. I take a very analytical approach. I'm looking at like other 5-star movies, like 5-star adventure movies, and you could look at like Jaws or like Return of the King or like Gladiator. You know, you could say you could throw in other genres into any one of those. But if I just pick, you know, those are like 5-star movies to me that I might compare it to. I think it's just a little bit below that, but it's a solid, great 4.5. I gave it the like. I wrote a long review about it because I love it, and that's what I'd go for it.
And just to clarify, you were saying earlier you like this movie much more than both The Godfathers, the first and the second.
Yeah, I think the Godfather 3 is a little better, but
That's it just ekes above a little bit better with the third. Okay, I'm gonna very unexcitingly choose or say I have a 4.5 for this as well. I in the past have actually put this as a 5 bagger, which is, I know some of you are rolling your eyes at me, but it's just because, is this the best movie I've ever seen made? No. Is it my favorite movie of all time? No. I think it is a perfect movie for what it's trying to be, though. Like, I think this movie knows what it is more than 99% of other movies, and it excels in that capacity. Like, it's so fun, it's so sincere. It was a movie based off of a theme park boat ride, and it should have been terrible, and instead it's something that's like lasted with me and like so many other people for 2 decades. It's had one of the most iconic performances of the century in it. Like, there's so many things that this movie did right that it should have just completely botched. And that's, to me, it adds, like, I think that context is really important. And I think it's as much a part of the story as what you're seeing on screen in some way. So I find that story and like that narrative of its creation so invigorating. I think the fact that it's made me happy for 20 years when I watch it is like really impressive. And you can, as much as anyone could roll their eyes, and I might too, about a different movie, about this being sort of silly and it shouldn't be this high. It's like, I think the highest watermark that almost any art can achieve is actually evoking emotion or some sort of deep thought. And if this could make me as happy as it has, and like not just happy, but like truly, like, I admire so much of what they were able to accomplish in this, then like, why would I not want to reward it highly for that? So I gave it 4.5. I knocked it down from a 5 because I do feel like there are ultimately, like you said, John, like there's movies that have meant more to me and I think actually have maybe like adjusted how I've looked at the world a little bit more, which I think is maybe even a higher form of art to me. But I think for what this movie is, like, it's beautiful and I really love it. So 4.5.
Well said. I can't even put anything on top of that. I think that was great. That was perfect.
Well, I will say, so a couple items before we wrap up here. This was our first episode, so feel free to leave any comments just roasting us, and we would love to hear what you have to say seriously. The reason we made it is we just wanted to talk with people about movies that we love and talk with each other about movies that we love. So any comments you have about things you like, you hate, whatever, we're happy to have them. And then, point of order, our next podcast we're planning to do on, John, do you want to say it?
In space. No one can hear you scream.
We're doing Alien, which is, again, the movie that got John and I in the first place talking a whole bunch and wanted to make a pod. And then, lastly, just I mentioned it a second ago, but in the comments, if there's anything that you want to see us make next, we're already putting together a little calendar of stuff we want to talk about. But we love any sort of input that you all have. So thanks for listening. Johnny, got anything else you want to say?
No, thanks for talking, man. This is great.
Awesome. This was fantastic. Well, appreciate the time, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
Sounds good.